People of the Purple Butterfly here, otherwise known as People of 7 on Twitter and YouTube, people are elsewhere on the internet. My soaps located purplebutterfly-soaps.myshopify.com, my blog purplebutterfly-people.blogspot.com. And I've been asked to show how to construct a lace wig cap, so I'm here to do that now. First, I'm going to show you a couple of wig caps and talk about their construction. This is one that I made a long time ago. The cap itself was a prefab. This is a stretch panel. Okay. The second one is a full lace wig cap. I even put a grommet there. This is power mesh, so it stretches there. This is Swiss lace. This is Swiss lace. As you can tell on the back, I put the darts at the bottom, and there are some darts that you could barely see at the top. On the stretch panel, don't put any darts on the stretch because that could compromise the stretch. Okay, this one is a full lace cap without any stretchy material. This is a prefab, but as everybody know, I got a dome. This was a medium. I took an old cap and literally added a section to it to turn it into a large. Okay. And here I have my lace. Oh, by the way, if you need some power mesh or stretch, you want to go to fabrichoseledirect.com. They charge me $7.99 for a yard, and I bought 2 yards of it, and that was years ago. Hold on, because this is the receipt. 2017, and I still have a whole lot of it. When I went to companies that sell lace panels and stretch lace, they wanted $25 for a fat quarter, which is basically 18 inches. that's come on now. Also, get yourself some Swiss lace. I only bought a yard of it. Well, no, I only have a yard left. Okay, the thing about the lace is you have to make sure that you're going vertically or horizontally. So that way your hexagon pattern lines up, so that way when you're ventilating, you get the hose in the right direction. Don't put it on the wig head like this at a diagonal. That will just mess you up, trust me. As for the stretch lace, like I said, I have a lot of it. I can make an entire dozen wig caps with this amount, but look at how much this stretches. So no matter how big your head is, if you put the stretch in the center there, it will expand to your head, which is why I came up with the pattern I did. Now, in the meantime, let's adjust this down. So I can show you what we're going to do here. Okay, this is an experiment. I have a mesh dome cap. I'm ventilating directly on the dome to see basically, if I can. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to construct a full lace wig cap with stretch. The pinning pattern, you could sew it yourself with some elastic thread or some nylon thread. Don't use the cotton thread, because when you put it on your actual head to fit, it's going to pop those stitches because cotton does not stretch. Nylon has some give and elastic has some give. Okay. Now, the first thing you're going to do, make sure that your fabric is facing the edges horizontal or vertical. Make sure it's not at a diagonal. Okay. Take a pin, which will help if I didn't have the lace on top of the pin. Oh, and if you got the edge available, that's the selvage edge. Do not put that as part of the construction. I should have cut that off actually. You want that lace to be raw. First thing I'm going to do is stick a pin right there to anchor. I'm going to turn this sideways so you can see it. And you want to make sure that the lace is over by 1 inch at least, where the eyebrows or the hairline is, so that way you don't have to worry about the lace being too short. If that's the case, anchor it with a pin. Okay. I'm going to cut this as soon as I find my scissors. They're never available when I need them. Hold on. All right. Now, I had this here. This is the dead center of the wig. This is frontal area. Actually, let's do this on my bigger wig head, so that way, but no, we'll just go ahead. Assume that part is the ear. So basically, the center to where the ear is where you're gonna want to cut. So first thing we're going to do is drape it properly. We're going to bring it around. This is hard to see. Let's tilt that down. Yeah, there we go. So you have your center pin, you have the front pin. You're going to bring that around where the ear is. Stick a pin. Okay, and then do the same thing on the other side. Stick a pin. Okay, now I'm going to remove the center pin here. You're going to smooth up. And obviously, heads are round and this fabric isn't. So, you're going to smooth that back, and that's going to make a little fold. See that? So where that folds, because it's curving around the shape of the head, you're going to put a pin there. And a pin where that fold starts. That's called a dart. Okay? You're going to do the same thing on the other side. Smooth it. Wherever the folds fall, that's where you're going to dart it. Sometimes the darts might make sense, and sometimes they might be in weird places. But since it's made for the shape of your exact head or whatever, that's okay. I usually do this with, after I do the head mode, which is why I said sometimes the darts will make sense and sometimes they won't, because everybody's head is different. Okay? Now, this is going to end up with a center dart, so let me move this pin out the way and go ahead and smooth that back. Well, actually, two center darts. Okay. So we'll just put a pin there and a pin there. One there to hold it, and one there. I'm going to need another dart right there. And maybe one right there. Make sure let's make it a point. Okay, now next step would be to sew those darts with a brown thread or a beige thread or something that matches the color that you're going for the skin tone, or an elastic thread so that way it's invisible. Okay, now once you got that center dart in play, you're going to go ahead and trim this off, preferably where the center of the wig cap would be, which means you will have a dart here, maybe a small dart here, one here, and that's it. Let me get something that will basically show you what I'm saying. Okay. That means all of this will be trimmed off. So the part that you're left with will look like that. Not a lot of darts, okay? Now, let me go ahead and trim this. I have more lace, so it won't matter. And as you can tell, that kind of made a circular cut because heads are not horizontal. So, after you dart it and sew it down, it's going to look like this. Okay. Now, let's cut a little piece of stretch. I'm not going to do the stretch so willy-nilly because, well, simple fact is, stretch is expensive, so for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to cut a small piece. You only need enough to cover literally the crown of the head. Like right up there. And I could use that for a different project if necessary. Now, That piece is only this big. It's not exactly even, but it doesn't have to be. Now you're going to find the center of the wig and literally drape it across where the crown is, okay? If that means moving a pin, move the pin. Okay. And then come back here. Try not to actually stretch the stretch. You want it to stretch during the process of being on the actual head. You don't want to stretch while you're making it. Because if you stretch it out while you're making it, then when it actually needs to be stretched, it won't, because it'll be depleted, shall we say. Okay. I'm going to move this pin and then put it back so that way the dart is still in place, okay? This will make sense to you in a minute. The first time I did it and seen it, it was like, but that don't make sense. But after a while, when you do it a couple of times, you'll get it. Now, you're going to bring the cap down. You're going to take your lace. Let me just go ahead and cut this. I can always buy more lace. Now, you'll notice this is a curved section. It doesn't matter because when you're done, it's going to be a perfectly shaped section. And you'll notice that's the selvage edge. I'm going to take that from the selvage edge because I know that that is horizontal and vertical, which is what we want. I'm going to bring the lace down to where the nape of the neck would be. And place a pin. And if you don't know where the nape of the neck on your wig cap happens to be, where the number for 22 is, go ahead and put the lace there. You can always trim off extra, but if you don't have the extra to begin with, then you're stuck. Now you're going to smooth that up and make sure that the lace is overlapping where the stretch is, if that makes sense. So you're going to end up with a pin right next to where the stretch is. Now you're going to smooth it around. Well, actually, I'm going to make sure this is even. Smooth it up. Put the pin. Okay. Oh, well, I just bent the pin. This pin here, oh, you can't see. This pin here is where the stretch panel is. This is the pin I just put in the lace. So basically there's an inch in between. I'm going to give it another inch or so that way when you're sewing through you can catch. Now you're going to smooth this up because you want it to connect to where the ear is, or at least another piece of the lace. Okay, let me grab some more pins from over here, and you're going to stick that somewhere in there where it connects. Make sure you can see the lace or the stretch. Just smooth that down so that way. And like I said, you're not going to dart the stretch. So try to get that as smooth as possible without having to dart the stretch. And then smooth that up. Put a pin there. Now, that brings us to the top. Okay. You're going to turn it to where you might need a dart, you might not. You're just going to get it on there. Anchor it with a pin. So that way it's on there. Now, you're going to sew where and connect all of those. It's going to basically look like a triangle. Let me get a crayon so I can show you what I mean. And maybe a needle and thread. Supplies always get ghosts when I need them. Okay. So basically, here, let's cut the end of this needle off. Give me some to work with. And like I said, you don't want to use cotton for this. My example is having cotton, but you know, you're going to use nylon or an elastic thread basically. Now, you're going to connect the stitches. This is not writing. Hold on. That one's not writing either. Okay. Shame when craft supplies decide they're not going to cooperate with you. Okay, that one writes. Okay. You can start from the back or you can start from the front. But basically, you see where the stretch is? You want to draw a line and draw a line. So what you're going to do, if you can tell real close, the front, the back, and the stretch are all connecting at this point here. So I'm going to put an anchor there so you can see. Those are new scissors. Why are they so dull today? And I'm going to do the same thing on this side, where the stretch and the front and the back are all connecting. And the front is being stubborn, so I'm going to take a, you can use a pencil too, but I'm going to take a chopstick, smooth that out, lift this pin, hold my place, because we want the front to be smooth regardless of what we do with the back and the stretch. Okay, I will put that pin back. But see, the stretch and the lace and the front and the back are all connected. Okay, so I'm going to anchor that all the way through. There is a method to this madness, don't worry. Now, let's put this pin over here. Now the next step would be to remove the pins from the back. And you see where that pin is? That's holding up the lace. That's holding up the stretch. Okay, so now we're going to cut that. Straight across. And this gives you enough lace for another wig cap. Okay, you see how that's connected? That's connected, this pin's connected. You can see the stretch, okay? Now, at this point, you would literally whip stitch the stretch and the back lace together. If there's any darts that needs to be put in place, like right here or maybe right here, for the shape of the back, you will sew those down after you sew down the stretch. Now, as you notice, the stretch on this side is overlapping the front. This is the center of the head where there are darts. This is the back. You want to make your line straight through the middle of both, okay? So when you sew it, you will actually be sewing over all those darts and the stretch, and then you trim off the stretch, which would leave you, and then you turn it inside out, and then you trim off the extra lace, which will leave you with a cap that's literally shaped like your head. Let me get another needle and some thorough red, and I'm going to do a mock-up and show you exactly how that's going to work. I need to adjust the heat of this apartment because I am sweating. This is elastic thread I got from Joann's. They only had white and black, so I dyed it brown. And it doesn't really look brown. It comes out kind of a grayish brown or a heathered brown, but basically it's brown. Now, I'm going to start from what would be the ear. And if you notice, the ear and the back is actually converging. That's what we want. Now, when you first do this, whip stitch this in place loosely as a basting stitch. You do not want to make a permanent stitch and then try it on and find out is the wrong configuration or too loose or too tight or whatever. This is basically a basting stitch so you can test if you got the measurements right. So do not make those stitches permanent until you know it's the right configuration. And that's another thing, the ears are going to overlap, and that's fine, but when it's time to actually cut it, you want to have extra stitches there. So that way when you cut where the ear is, you don't have to worry about, I mean, mine came to a point, literally overlapped. And then when it was time to cut for the ear, the extra fabric that was removed from the ear was no big deal because it was stitched securely down. And on this side is different because that side of my head is actually different. One ear is actually bigger than the other. So as you can tell, it's slightly different. Now, where's that needle? Okay. You're going to follow the line of the stretch where the dart is. So basically you're going through the darts, you're going through the stretch, you're going through all of that. You can make it a straight line or you can just baste it and adjust it later. Okay? But since my marker didn't work and I failed to put a pin there because basically I ran out of pins, I'm just doing a mock-up to show you. Okay. Now I am going to trim off the stretch, but I'm not going to cut the lace anymore because I can reuse this lace. I'm not actually making a wig cap. I'm showing you how to make a wig cap, so I'm not going to compromise the lace for a mock-up. Hold on, there's a knot in my thread. I hate when that happens. There we go. No knots on my watch. Well, we'll leave it there. It's just a mock-up, so it doesn't matter. Okay, and through that dart. There's the back of the lace. So let's make sure we anchor that down too. All layers. Stitching there. Okay, now then we would come to the back. With some new thread because that was too short. And again, we're starting by the ear. Remember where that connected? So instead of working on the front, now we're working on the back. You see these two lines here? One's holding the stretch, one's holding the lace. We're going to sew in between that line. Okay, I'm picking up from the back, the stretch, and the front. And even though this is elastic thread, I'm not pulling it as tight as it can go, because you want it to have some of that stretchability left. Okay, now we're just going to anchor that there. Once you do a successful mock-up, you could then go to your sewing machine and sew it, or you can just stitch it completely by hand. Because once you got the basic pattern, you're good to go. Okay, making sure you can see. So yeah. Now, if you notice, the pins are in between the stretch and the lace. It's just hard to sew this way. Let me put it in my lap. There we go. And that's also why you want the stretch to be longer than the back and overlap it. So that way when you sew it, you can sew both layers at the same time. And then however you finish it, whether it be a blanket stitch or whip stitch or whatever, or machine stitch even, you know, those two pieces will be permanently connected. Okay. Now a dart did show up from where that fabric kind of stretched into the mix, but I didn't purposely put a dart there. That's the difference. You do not want to purposely put a dart in the middle of the stretch. If a dart ends up in the stretch, it will still conform to the head that is being created on, because of the simple fact that, you know, that's what they do. But you don't want to add a dart because, say for instance, the dart is shaping a certain way and the stretch is going a different way on the person's head, then that's going to be a conflict and it'll make a lump or a bump, and you know, who wants that? Okay, now this is when you would trim off the stretch, you would trim off the lace. What I usually do is I fold this back. See where the lace, the stretch is? I would literally fold that back and whip stitch it. And then sew the darts. I'm not going to sew the darts here. I'm just going to show you. Basically, all these pins are about to come out, and you're going to see what you got. Okay. I'm going to take the pins out the back. Especially the one that was holding the lace. Now, you're going to lift up the back to expose the stretch. Remove that pin. Then put it back down. Okay. Now, the pins that were encased in the stretch, pull those out. Then remove the cap. Oh, there's one I missed. Now you're going to very carefully, because you don't want to stick yourself, remove the pins that was inside the stretch. I usually count how many pins I have in the stretch, so that way I know how many pins to remove. In this case, there was 5. There's the little red one. Okay, I'm missing a pin. Ah, there we are. Okay. Now, as you can tell, you now have a cap that's in one piece. Here comes the tricky part. I'm going to use pins to demonstrate how this is going to come together. Okay. If you'll notice, it's going like this and then like this. The back of the wig goes straight down, literally. So I'll put the cap back on. Okay. Like I said, you're going to fold over the front, whip that down, and then you will sew these darts. For the back, you lift it up. You would literally trim off that stretch, any excess. And whip stitch that down, okay? Let me just go ahead and trim this so that way you can see what we're working with here. Pretend these scissors are the whip stitch. So that way you can see basically the cap construction. This is a stretch panel, this is lace, this is lace. That's how I got this wig cap here. Okay, now if you notice where the whip stitch is, there's also stitching down here, because after I whip stitched it down, I went back and sewed on top of it. The grommet is a piece of lace material, not lace, ribbon that I put straight across from the ear to the ear. That's just for strength. When you're pulling on a wig, especially with stretch, you're pulling where the ears are. If you have something like opera lace or HD lace, constant pulling the wig on, pulling the wig off can weaken that lace or compromise the stretch. So basically that grommet basically gives you something to pull on, so that way when you're pulling the wig on and off, you're actually pulling on that reinforced ribbon. So yeah. Now that you untrimmed that side, you're going to turn it inside out. And that's where you would sew down the darts or whatever. So you end up with you know, the format I was telling you about. Whip that down, reinforce stitch, whip that down, reinforce stitch, turn it back, and then you have a reinforced stitch on both sides, and that's how you end up with a lace cap with a stretch panel. Well, actually, let me fold this part in so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, pretend that's laying down because it was whip stitched. So your finished product would look something like this. Lace, stretch panel, lace. All the extra will be trimmed away and you end up with a professional looking wig cap that fits your head or the size of your mannequin head, but most people get a mannequin head that fits their head. Okay, let me bring you up. So we can discuss. Okay, this mannequin head is a 22 inch. The average person has a 22 inch head. This mannequin head will not fit this big old dome of mine. My mannequin head, my personal mannequin head, says 24 because I have a 24-inch dome. It's big, y'all. So if I was making a wig cap for me, I would use this. If I was making it for somebody, say, hey, can you make me a full lace wig, blah, 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 I'll pay you. Okay, I'm going to charge them for the lace. I'm going to charge them for the stretch. I'm going to charge them for the hair. I'm going to charge them for the ventilation. Because that's what we do, you know. Wigs are expensive. The hair is expensive. The lace is expensive. And somebody go, oh, I'll pay you $100 to make me a full lace wig. Don't fall for that. You know, even if they provide the hair, you still provide a skill that's worth your time and worth getting paid for your time. Okay? Now, for somebody to say, make me a wig, if I look at them and can tell that they have a small head, I'm going to use a 22-inch dome. Or like for my daughter, 22 is too big. She's got a little head. She's like 21 inches around. That brings me to another point. After you make your mock-up and everything, and you try it on your client, you're going to literally mark while it's on their head with a crayon or a marker, but markers are hard to remove, and then you have to literally cut it off or use some kind of solvent to get rid of it. Crayons and chalk, that stuff washes away in the first wash, but you're going to mark around their nape area, so that way you know where to attach a piece of elastic or an encased elastic closure for like adjusters. That will come all the way up here to where the ear is, all the way around. It will, this one doesn't have it because since it was made for my exact head, I didn't need elastic or anything. I did need an extra dart right there because apparently the nape of my neck goes into a narrow stance. On this one, I put a piece of elastic there along with some combs. And that's another reason why you customize it, because the elastic on this wig is only right here to here and right here to here, and this part has no elastic in it. So, you know, and a couple of combs. I found over the years combs annoy the snot out of me. Just, I can't stand it. But, okay, like I said, my head narrows right here. So I only need the elastic here and here and here to here, so that way it squinches on the side, but there's nothing squinch me in the middle. I make that part narrow, and my head's a dome. It's bigger here than it is here, so I only need the elastic in that spot. So yeah, that's the good thing about wig construction. I mean, it's just like if you had a dress form and you draped the fabric over it and then drew in what you did, and you know that becomes a paper pattern, and then you can sew clothes with it. That's the same thing you did here. You drape the lace on top, do a mock-up. If the mock-up's good, then you sew that down as permanent stitches. So yeah, the only thing I would change about this one is I would move the stretch out the way, put a dart in the actual lace, so that way there's no dart in the stretch, and that way that part's smooth, and when you put it on, it stretches here this way and this way, so that way it fits all the way around perfectly to your actual hair. So yeah, the reason why stretch panels are good is for, like, okay, mine are exact to my head, so I don't have to do all that, you know. But say for instance you're working with someone who their head might be 21 inches, 22 inches, 21 and a half. You make it to their size and it will stretch that way, this way, and this way. This material is 4-way stretch. And this doesn't stretch at all, as you can tell, which is why having a stretch panel is desirable. Let's give you a good example of that. Okay, this doesn't stretch. We're starting here, and it stretches all the way down to there. That's quite a bit of stretch. So that's why you would like to have a piece of stretch material that conforms to the head that you're working with. Now I'm going to put all this lace back up before I forget, because yeah. This lace actually got lost. I bought new lace and basically found the lace a year later. And the dumb part was it was 4 feet from me the whole time. I just didn't know it. It had fell behind my dresser. So until I moved the dresser, it was just sitting there, being an expense that couldn't be used because, well, like I said, it was expensive and it didn't get to be used because it got lost. So that's when I put it in this bag, and then that bag goes into another bag. And yeah, every time I use the stretch, I make sure I fold it up nice and neat, because stretch will wrinkle. You don't want it to wrinkle, because then when you have to use it, those wrinkles don't necessarily iron out because of the simple fact that this material can't really iron it. You can blow dry it, you can, it can withstand heat, but when it comes to direct heat, like an iron is polyester or something, it will melt if you get it too hot. And since I don't know how hot that temperature would be, I don't risk it. This is an old wig bag. As you can tell, it came with a hole in it. So that way when I put stuff in there, I can squeeze it down and squeeze all that excess air out. And then I put it in this bag that has a zipper. So that way it's always protected, never dusty. And I know exactly where this is at all times because I'm not losing it again. Okay, and yeah. Well, actually I'm going to take a picture of this. And then I'm going to take it apart and put it back in my lace stash. So that way Monique could see how it's supposed to be. Or was it unique? There we go. By the way, the little flaps that show up when you make this, when you cut around the ear after, you know, the construction is complete, that disappears altogether. Actually, let me show you. There's the braided wig. Okay. This part is this part. When you cut it around your ear, it goes away. Oh, and just occurred to me, because somebody will ask, that black running stitch right there, that's elastic thread. Like I said, I didn't need anything here because the back of my neck is narrow, but I did need stretch on the sides. So that way it stretches out or squinches in where my head does. So that way when I put it on, it still holds even though there's no elastic in the back. Industry standard, they always put the elastic in the back. I don't get that. Not everybody can use the elastic in the back. Some of us need it on the sides, you know, just from the shape of our heads. That's like, this wig cap is made from a dome cap. If it didn't have any elastic here, now it's going to have a panel here if ventilating directly on it doesn't work out, but it has been. But say for instance I decided to put a closure there, then I would sew through all layers of this, not just the top layer, so that way the elastic that's in there automatically becomes the elastic band. But technically I only need elastic from here to here and from here to here, and the back I don't need elastic. But other people, they might need that elastic band all the way around to hold it on their head, and some people might only need it, you know. That's the fun part about customizing something to the individual. Mostly I customize things to the way my head is, and then if that doesn't work for somebody, then I go behind myself and customize it to the way their head is, because the only head model I have other than the 22-inch mannequin or canvas block and the 24-inch is a head mold. And if someone sends me a head mold, I'm going to put it on the 22-inch and pat it out so that way it matches their head, and that will be my mannequin or my block that I could work on. Unless they say, I got a dome. It's like, okay, tape measure time, because I have only met 2 people in my entire life that has a head as big as mine, and they're related to me. And one of them's male. You know, it's like, I went to put on a hat. You can't wear my hat. And the hat was too tight. And it's like, you can wear my hat. But I'm a guy. I was like, and I got a dome. Now, I try to play it off and say it was because, you know, my hair is natural and it's fluffy. But y'all know, when I braid my hair down, it's still 24 inches around because I got a dome. Anyway, this has been People of 7 on Twitter and YouTube, People elsewhere on the internet. My soaps located at PurpleButterfly-Soaps.myshopify.com, my blog, PurpleButterfly-People.blogspot.com. Y'all stay blessed, stay tuned. Bye now. I've talked myself hoarse. It's time for coffee, maybe breakfast, because, well, it's 8:17 in the morning. And time to get on my day. Y'all have a happy Saturday. This has been People of 7. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Bye now. This is the wig cap we just made. You will notice it gathers once it's off of the the canvas block, because the stretch is retracted. Okay, I'm going to put this on. It's going to be a little tight because that's a 22 and my head is 2 inches bigger because I got a dome, as you can tell. You know, even when I anchor it down, get all my hair out the way, it's still a big head. But I feel it's important to show you how it's going to look. And then we're going to map the hairline, okay? Oh, yeah, that's a real tight fit. Ow, 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 ow. Okay. By the way, if you have a selvage edge, cut that off the finished product before you start working on the ventilation process. There we go. Now, take some crayons in a relatively dark color. You don't want to use white or a light color that you can't see through. Okay, now you see where it's overlapping the ear? When you cut it off after constructing the wig, that part's going to be completely gone. Okay, now it's going to be hard to see because I'm not wearing my glasses, but I have a widow's peak here. And see, I have an uneven hairline, which is why I started making wigs in the first place, because I could never find a wig that, you know, was shaped like my head. Okay. Ta-da. Now, you're going to go around your ear. And you see how that part would literally get cut off of the ear. So you end up with a flatter surface. This part will be missing. This part will be missing because it's going around the ear. And that's how you get the shape of the wig cap. Okay. All this overlap will be gone because the ear is up here. Which is why when you stitch it down, you're going to stitch it down in a way that reinforces all of that. That was so tight it was pressing in on my ears. and all of a sudden I couldn't hear because it pressed in. But yeah, let's put this back on the wig head so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. Alrighty then. See my widow's peak there? Now when you get to the ear section, that will be cut off where the stretch is and part of the lace. And same thing on this side. So you don't have to worry about the overlap and all that for construction because that part gets trimmed off. That's why when I said do a whip stitch and then fold it back and do a whip stitch, you end up with something that looks like a French seam. So that way, when there's a reinforced stitch, like right here, I didn't show that last time. After you stitch it down, you're going to fold it down. Didn't really leave myself enough leeway. I always leave enough leeway. You're going to fold it down and stitch that. And then on the inside, you do the same thing. So that way you have a reinforced stitch. That way when you cut it, those stitches will stay in place, especially if you're using a lock stitch. I took away my examples. I'll be right back. Hold on, that's from my recording. There we go. Oh good, it's still recording. That alarm means it's time to take my medicine. But okay, you see where the stitches are reinforced? Those are lock stitches. So when that part got cut off where the ear is, I didn't have to worry about it unraveling because there's lock stitches all the way through. Basically a lock stitch is like a blanket stitch. Everybody's familiar with a blanket stitch. Well, when you do a blanket stitch, every 3 or 4 blanket stitches, you're going to make a knot. You know, it's like you wind the yarn a couple extra times and give it a pull, it makes a knot. So when you trim it, and when I do it, everything at the edge is a knot stitch and then the rest is blanket stitches. So that way when you cut it, that's not unraveling at all because there's lock stitches all the way through. So even when you trim it off, you're still golden. So yeah. Let me see if I can show you the thread I used. That thread, I went to Joann's Fabric. See where my finger is? That thread is the exact same color of my skin. I went to Joann Fabric. I went to the Gutermann section. Actually, you can see it better over here. And I literally went to where all the colored threads were and literally picked up one, picked up another, and matched it to my skin tone. I figure that way it will match, you know, when I do, and I made sure it was polyester or nylon thread. I ended up with polyester thread. That still has a little stretch to it. Cotton thread will pop, especially on the part where the elastic is. Nylon thread has a little stretch, polyester thread has a little stretch, flat out elastic thread has a little stretch. So that's what you want to use. So that way when you're doing a lock stitch, a blanket stitch, or a whip stitch or whatever, when you put it on your head, you don't have to worry about, and then you have to re-sew those sections because that's annoying, trust me. But anyway, I just wanted you to see that. So yeah, in the meantime, I'm going to take my hair back a loose because, well, this hairstyle does not work for me. it's, it's like this part is fluffy and this part is sewn down, and I'm not wearing a wig today, so I'm just gonna let my stuff fluff out. Besides, it's still wet because I washed my hair this morning. Anyway, this has been People7 on Twitter and YouTube, People elsewhere on the internet. My soaps located PurpleButterfly-soaps.myshopify.com. My blog, PurpleButterfly-people.blogspot.com. Y'all stay blessed, stay tuned. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share.